Guys, you've probably noticed that modern football isn't just about keeping possession for the sake of it anymore. Gone are the days when teams would slowly pass their way up the pitch, controlling the game with endless sequences like we saw from Pep Guardiola's City in recent years. And maybe that's precisely why City look more vulnerable than ever this season, because the meta has moved on and they've struggled to keep up. And do you know what's even better? It's Arne Slot who's been at the forefront of this tactical evolution that is taking the Premier League by storm. Sounds like we're overhyping our own gaffer, right? Well, hear us out for a bit, we're going to walk you through it. See, even Guardiola himself recently admitted that the way teams like Liverpool, Bournemouth, Brighton and Newcastle play now is what defines modern football. But what does that actually mean? How exactly has Liverpool's identity evolved under Slot? And why is it now being labelled as the blueprint for the Premier League's tactical future? Let's break it down. When Pep mentioned Liverpool, he wasn't just talking about Arne Slot's version of the team. He was referring to something deeper, the identity Liverpool has carried for years. You know, the heavy metal football Jurgen Klopp built. That ability to raise the tempo in an instant, throw teams into chaos, and pounce on the openings it creates. It was thrilling, unpredictable, and at times unstoppable. But if that was already the meta, then why didn't Klopp dominate the Premier League like Guardiola did? Simple. Chaos is a double-edged sword. You don't always control where it leads, and if the opposition can match your intensity or turn the chaos against you, it becomes a gamble. Fatigue, injuries, and inconsistency creep in, especially in a relentless league like the Premier League. And that's exactly what happened at the end of the 2023-24 season, when Klopp's Liverpool fell apart in the title race. So what's changed? Why is this chaotic, high-intensity football now being labelled as the future? Why did Pep, of all people, acknowledge it as the modern way? Well, because it's not just chaos anymore. See, the Premier League's top sides are now keeping some aspects of this chaos. The transitions, the fast pace, and the physicality, but they are also introducing a more structured play mixed with a hint of fluidity. And guess what? No one has mastered that shift better than Arne Slot's Liverpool. Let's take Bournemouth's manager, Andoni Iraola, who is having an outstanding season with the Cherries as an example. The Spaniard has been very clear about what's driving their success. Relentless running, high risk, high reward football, and a willingness to embrace chaos. He openly admits that this style can backfire at times, but for his team, it's a risk worth taking. And crucially, Iraola also rejects rigid positional play, preferring to give his players the freedom to find solutions in real time rather than sticking to a predefined structure. Now, if Bournemouth and Liverpool are both playing what Pep Guardiola called modern football, then why are they nowhere near us in the table? Well, this is where Arne Slot's influence comes in. Slot inherited a squad built for Klopp's high-intensity, chaos-driven football, a squad that thrived on heavy pressing and fast transitions to create chances. But rather than completely overhauling the team, Slot refined it, keeping the aggression but adding something Klopp's Liverpool never quite mastered: control, calculation, and adaptability on the ball. It's still fast and intense, but now there's structure behind the chaos, and that's the difference. Now we often talk about how Slot is a control freak, how he's brought a more structured and measured approach to Liverpool, but at the same time we also say he's kept the chaotic nature of Klopp's team thriving on counter-attacks and transitions. So which is it? Are we a controlled team or a chaotic team? Well, that's exactly what modern football is about. It's no longer one or the other. The best teams now strike the perfect balance between control and chaos, and no one is doing it better than Liverpool. Modern football isn't about choosing between control and chaos, it's about mastering both. The ability to circulate possession, break teams down with structured build-up, and then, in an instant, flip the switch and go direct. That's exactly what Arne Slot's Liverpool have perfected. And the proof? Just take a look at this plot chart ranking Premier League teams based on positional attacks versus counter-attacks. Most teams lean heavily toward one side. You've got Newcastle and Spurs who thrive in transitional play, relying on pace and directness. Then there's City and Arsenal who dominate with possession-based, methodical football. But the only team that sits perfectly in between, Liverpool. This is what makes us so unpredictable. We can build from the back, break lines with short, controlled passing, but when needed, we can bypass the press entirely, go long, and create the counter-attacking scenarios we thrived on under Klopp. And that brings us right back to the foundation of the current football meta: structured build-up play. On paper, Liverpool's shape hasn't changed much. We're still playing a 4-3-3. But if you go back and watch almost any Liverpool game this season, you'll notice something consistent. Our build-up shape remains the same. Whether it's a 4-2 or a 4-1 structure, the passing lanes between the centre-backs, full-backs, and pivots are always carefully maintained. This isn't just about keeping possession for the sake of it, it's about creating control in deep areas while giving ourselves multiple ways to progress up the pitch. Slot has built clear, repeatable patterns that allow Liverpool to manipulate the opposition's press, giving us the ability to either break lines with short passing or go long when needed. This structured approach is what allows Liverpool to balance control and chaos so effectively. It's the base that makes everything else possible. With two centre-backs supported by two narrow deep fullbacks and one or two midfielders dropping in, we always have the numbers to maintain possession when we want to. But if an opponent decides to press us high, that's when we flip the switch and unleash the second pillar of the modern football meta, creating transition scenarios through quick counter-pressing moments. See, we often talk about Trent, Konate, Van Dijk, and even Alisson going long in our games, but having elite passers at the back isn't enough. For this system to work, we need players further up the pitch who are positionally aware, aggressive in duels, and relentless in pressing to win second balls. This is exactly why Dominik Szoboszlai and Luis Diaz have been crucial this season, even in games where they aren't at their best on the ball. Their movement, intensity, and ability to create space for Salah and Gakpo to exploit is a massive reason why we've been so effective. And that brings us to the third and final piece of the current football meta, positional fluidity, because without freedom of movement, none of this would work. Under Arne Slot, Liverpool's players aren't locked into rigid positions. They have the freedom to roam, exploit space, and find their own solutions on the ball. Take Trent Alexander-Arnold, for example. We've seen him tuck into midfield, push higher into the right half space, or even pull wide to stretch the pitch, all depending on where the space is. He's no longer just an overlapping fullback or an inverted playmaker. He is now moving in ways that disrupt the opposition's defensive shape. Then there's Mohamed Salah, arguably the most devastating player in transition in world football. Under Slot, Salah has been given total freedom to stay high when Liverpool are defending deep, making him the key pillar of our rest attack structure. When we win the ball back, he's already positioned as the perfect outlet to punish teams in transition. And this isn't just theory, we've seen it in action multiple times this season. Think about the goals against Spurs and West Ham, where Salah didn't even bother tracking back during settled defense. Instead, he stayed high, waiting for the moment to explode into space, and when the transition came, we ripped teams apart. But hold on for a second. There's something else that Slot tweaked to help us control this chaos we tried to create even more. See, last campaign, we averaged the second lowest passes per defensive action in the league at 7.66, just behind Spurs, meaning we pressed like madmen. This season, that number has risen to 9.03. It might not seem like a drastic jump, but in reality it changes everything. Why? Because pressing less means conserving energy, keeping players fresher for longer periods, not just over 90 minutes, but across the entire season. And with Premier League teams becoming increasingly adept at playing through the press, constantly hounding the ball is no longer as effective or sustainable as it used to be. It's energy draining, and when it doesn't work, it exposes you badly. By reducing press intensity, Slot is ensuring that Liverpool are still aggressive, but not reckless. Instead of exhausting themselves chasing shadows, the team is now better positioned to capitalize on transitional moments when they actually arise. See, instead of a revolution where the team's whole style of play is shifted, Arne Slot led an evolution instead. He took the best parts of Klopp's devastating style of hitting on transition, tweaked the pressing to give the players a more of a breathing room, and introduced a more calculated approach in deep areas to help us have that control over games we often lacked. The result of this evolution has become the current football meta, and that is why Arne Slot is considered to be at the forefront of it. Sure, this transitional and physical style of play will probably not last for long, as football is an ever-evolving game, but what is certain that Arne Slot will always find a way to adapt to whatever the future might hold. So what do you think? Do you agree with us that with Slot leading this evolution of our squad, he ultimately created this new football meta? Do you think that teams will now try to shift to this style of play more? We all saw how City spent millions on a transitional threatening player like Omar Marmoush. So perhaps this is the dawn of a new era in football. Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and if you enjoyed our video, make sure to hit those like and subscribe buttons for more content.